Michael Gove says he wants to change dramatically the prison experience for inmates,
Are any of them open? Can I have a quick look inside?
to prepare them for the outside world with more productive work inside prison, a more weekday release for prisoners near the end of their sentence, who would then return to jail at the weekend.
Sorry, I'm Michael. I'm the Minister.
Nice to meet you, Minister.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I just want to get a sense of the cell, because these cells look, I mean, you know, nobody wants to be inside, but they're relatively okay. Would it help if, in the run-up to being released, you were out on temporary licence for a bit?
Of course it would. Oh, you want? Yeah, it's the only way.
No, some people would say, well, if we let you out on temporary licence, then there's a chance that you might abuse that trust.
It could happen. Well, we're only humans. I could make a mistake. I might make a mistake. I might not make a mistake. But how can we judge someone before it's happened?
Yes, and you're going to be let out anyway. So why not try and make sure that you've got the right preparation?
I'm not asking for any. No one's asking for anything. I don't want anything from anyone.
Nice to meet you. What's your name again?
Michael Gove.
Michael Gove, you're new Prison Minister, yeah? Yeah. Do a better job than that last one, yeah?
Well, we'll see. Okay, good luck.
Michael Gove hopes he can improve prison regimes by giving prison governors like Mark Drury more autonomy, just as he did with head teachers when he was Education Secretary.
Yes.
At the moment, your hands are tied. You can't shuffle money around budgets, that sort of thing.
Very limited on what we can move around. We have
loads of regulations from his ministry.
Yes. Yeah. So we have
thousands.
In fact, there are 46,000 pages of rules and guidance restricting what work or education is available inside prisons, even ruling on how many jigsaw puzzles are allowed in any cell.
One of the things I'm keen to do is to give governors the opportunity to actually make the life of staff easier so they can do their job better.
Yes, so there's items like that, and I think some of the training that we have to buy in.
Some unhappy customers there.
Yeah, that is one of our standard wings. So we're going to be going up here.
Okay.
Relocate.
If you were in my shoes, and you could tell the governors and you could work with the staff and get things to change, what would be top of your list?
Top of the list is what you call certain things like you need more time out of the cell and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The government insists tagging technology has made temporary release feasible, but giving prisoners out-of-cell productive activity inside the jail needs prison staff, and numbers were slashed in the coalition years. David Cameron's promised prison reform before, quite often, but the outgoing inspector of prisons, Nick Hardwick, is amongst those saying that reoffending rates and prison overcrowding have been getting even worse in recent years. The Inspector of Prisons, who you obviously rate highly because you've just given him another important job, but he says in the last 5 years things have got worse. But you announced a rehabilitation revolution in opposition. It was meant to be a burning passion of the Prime Minister. Why should anyone believe that you really mean it this time?
Well, I think just judge us on what we're saying and what we're doing.
Well, that's what people are doing. They're judging on what you've been doing for 5 years, and nothing much has changed.
I think a lot has changed. I think two things in particular.
For the worse, he says.
I think two things in particular.
The Inspector of Prisons says things have got worse in prisons in the last 5 years.
I absolutely acknowledge that in some prisons the situation has got worse, and for many prisoners the situation is not as it should be. But I also think that looking at the really difficult situation that the Chief Inspector describes, that's a challenge to me in order to ensure that we take the admittedly radical steps necessary in order to improve things.
You heard one of the prisoners we were talking to saying he thought the problem was there weren't enough staff.
Yes.
Your budget's shrinking year on year like most departments.
Yes.
We've already had thousands cut. There will be even more cuts, won't there?
No, there needn't be cuts. What there can be is flexible and imaginative deployment of staff. At the moment, there are restrictions for which I'm responsible that tie the hands of governors. I think, with the right will, that we can enable governors to run prisons in a way which is more flexible. We can give the opportunity to people who are running prison workshops to be more entrepreneurial.
There's a long tradition of politicians being converted to the idea of shorter sentences intellectually and then running terrified of the opinion polls. You're converted deep down, aren't you?
One thing I'm very keen on is not shorter sentences, but alternative sentences, similar to those which have been pioneered in America and indeed in the drugs court which ran in Liverpool. I think in some cases magistrates should have additional powers to be able to say to an offender that if they undertake a prescribed programme of treatment, that they won't go to jail, but if they do fail to follow through on that treatment, then the feet won't touch the ground. There's something else, though, that I think is important, and that is when prisoners are serving their sentences, towards the end of their sentence, I think that we should still keep them in custody at night, still ensure that they think of themselves as people who are serving a sentence, but allow them during the day out to work.
Some of your colleagues are saying you've gone pinko on them.
I don't think I'm a pinko in any area. I believe in cutting crime.
You talked about the blob in your last job.
Yes.
A resistant force that all had the opposite view to you, the educational establishment. Who's the blob in this world that you're in now?
I don't think there is a blob.
It's not the Ministry of Justice.
No.
It's not the Treasury, you don't let you have enough money.
No, I don't think there is a blob. Whether or not there was a blob in education, people will decide. I don't think there is a blob in justice.
Maybe the blob is opinion polls and your own right-wingers in the Conservative Party,
Well,
who don't let many justice ministers do what some of them would like to do.
we had a debate on prisons in the House of Commons just a couple of weeks ago. What was striking is that there were far more Conservative MPs who wanted to speak, and far more Conservative MPs than any other party who wanted to make the case for prison reform.
One other thing in your entree as Minister of Justice is the possibility of coming up with some sort of National Sovereignty Act that
Yes.
asserts Parliament's sovereignty while we're still in the European Union.
Yes.
That's just a nonsense, isn't it?
It's not a nonsense at all. I think it's important to look at the example that other European countries have. In Germany, for example, they have a constitutional court. That constitutional court has the power to say that sometimes EU law could be inconsistent with Germany's own basic laws.
You're clearly quite passionate about your job, and the wonderful thing is you get to keep your job and decide which way you want to vote in the referendum. So why not just say, I'm going to rule out staying in?
So I'm going to wait until the Prime Minister comes back from the Brussels Council with the concluded deal and then reach a judgment.
On these terms, the Prime Minister said last week, on these terms, if we weren't a member, I'd go in to Europe. Would you?
I think, in fairness, I need to wait until
He didn't.
I've heard all the
He
evidence.
didn't wait.
The Prime Minister
He thought he'd seen enough.
has a freedom of manoeuvre, which, as leader of the party and as the winner of the general election, he is fully entitled to. I think my role,
He also said, follow your heart. That was his advice
Yes.
to MPs.
yes,
You're said to be agonising. Will you follow your heart?
I think it's very good advice from the Prime Minister, but the important thing is that it's a heart and head decision, I think, for everyone.